Hello and welcome to the Swan Song Project Podcast. My name is Ben Buddy Slack and I'm the founder of the Swan Song Project. We're a charity that helps people face the end of their lives to write and record their own original songs. If you'd like to find out more about the charity, you can check out our website, which is swansongproject.co.uk, or you can also follow us on our various social media channels that will be in the description to this episode. The podcast features a range of songwriters and we talk about one of their songs, tell us a bit about how they wrote it, they share us a songwriting tip, and we also talk about a song that's meaningful to them in some way related to bereavement. This episode features Pat Fulgoni, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so today I'm here with Fat.
What are you saying?
Good start, isn't it?
A while.
We'll try that again, shall we? Okay, today I'm here with Pat Fulgoni. Fulgoni, isn't it? Pat Fulgoni.
Yeah, Fulgoni, yeah.
I'll get it right this time. Okay, today I'm here with Pat Fulgoni. Thanks for joining me, Pat.
No problems, love it.
This is the Swan Song Project Podcast. If you've seen these before, heard them before, we'll do them in three parts. First, we're going to put up my guest songs. We're going to talk a little bit about how they wrote that. Then section 2, Pat's going to share with us a songwriting tip. And then section 3, we're going to talk about songs meaningful to Pat in some way related to bereavement. So I'll hand you over now and ask you to introduce your song for us, please, Pat.
Right, so the songwriter... a minute, you might have to rewind that as well. Good God. So the song I'm going to play is a collaboration with a young drum and bass artist called Kino, and it's called As One, featuring Pat Fulgoni, and it was released about 4 years ago on Hospital Records.
goes under it.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So that was As One by Kino featuring Pat Fulgoni.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cool song and it's a cool video as well.
Thank you.
So what can you tell us about writing that? So it's collaboration with Kino. How did that go?
Yeah, well, I pulled it out, right? I'm sat here looking for things to do, and I found the album,
Nice.
It was on picture disc, which I really like. Look at that, that's wonderful. I wish I could see that.
Yeah.
So I guess I started that track really, and it existed as a vocal originally. I was hanging around waiting for the birth of my son, and I was also so that's in it. I was also concerned about the plight of refugees, so that's in it. There's kind of like a sea shanty vibe to it. You know, you might have clocked the lyrics. And I really didn't know what to do with it, to be honest. I didn't know whether to release it as myself and then as I do, I got a request from a few drum and bass producers over the years, and one of them was this young lad from Manchester. And there was something about his music, it kind of really impressed me. And although it's a bit weird, kind of agreeing to collaborations when you've not met people before over the internet, it can be quite freaky. There was just something about his fusion. It struck me he was really into impressionist composers like Claude Debussy, who I really like. And obviously he was really into drum and bass, and it was quite fresh sounding. And I thought, oh God, all right, I'll give you this vocal. You know, remix it for us then. If you really do like, as you say, what I'm doing, here's a vocal. Let's see what we can do with it. And of course he got back to me. He was still at Manchester University, and he did this amazing remix. And it was exactly as I imagined it, this huge orchestral surface with these vocals over the top, excellent production on the vocals, you know, brilliant technique to his production. And he ended up being signed by Hospital Records, which was one of the labels that I've been working with as a kind of like a co-writer or a session musician within drum and bass circles. And that became his first single, I think, for that label. It was good. It was good. You know, it kind of helped establish him, got my voice out there in another direction, which is what it's all about. I mean, as you can probably tell, I do lots and lots of different styles, from blues to recently trap music to you know, I've done all kinds, psychedelic stuff, you know, and it was just really fresh to get this kind of classical drum and bass tune back and then released.
Yeah, it must be an exciting way of doing things that way, of working with so many different people and the different directions it pulls you in, I guess. And do you do that way? Because I always imagine with collaborations like that, I always imagine it being the other way, like the producer sends a track, here's an instrumental track that I've got, can you put a vocal down over it? Does it happen this way quite a lot as well, where you send and was that just a bare vocal track you sent over, just the singing with no instrumentation?
I had these ideas for a while. It was kind of a nice melody I'd been working around with, thinking, yeah, you know, this has really worked well on something, you know. So it was quite rare. Normally it's bottom up, but this was top down, if you like. Yeah, he really liked it. And he wanted the opportunity to work with me vocals because he'd heard them on, I think, artists like Camel and Crooked, who are quite large, but a lot more mainstream. You know, I really like this. It's had a nice underground flavour. It was quite fresh. And it kind of worked in that way. But sometimes you get given a kind of a dance track, and then you've got to lever the vocals on top of it, which can be quite tricky because obviously things are quite exact. When you do dance music and drum and bass, and any kind of organic instrument can be a challenge to make it sound half decent over the top of it. Unless, of course, they're going to chop it up and make you sound like Cher. Something that obviously I don't want them to do.
That's always a good way to go.
Yeah.
Cher approach.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm constantly surprised with finding different people's approaches and different ways of doing things. Like, it makes perfect sense that people do things from all angles, and there's some people will do vocals first and do that. But I'm constantly surprised when I find about a new genre or someone else's way of working. But like, the more I hear about it, the more it makes sense that, you know, whatever your specialty is, you can start from that, and people work in different ways, don't they?
I think so. I mean, with a lot of other genres, you do tend to start with the instrumental first. to be honest. And then you've got this whole thing, you know, what words don't you like? I mean, that's quite important, because you could find yourself delivering a lot of work on something, and it's just the one word that really annoys the producer. I mean, that could be love. You know, not everyone wants the word love in a track, do they? Some people like it to be a bit more fierce and manly, or whatever. So you kind of got to get your head around what they want. And if you've not met the producer before, that can be quite tricky.
Yeah. And to get, like, because I guess, like, you know, lots of songwriters will work from a melody first as well. But like when it's going to a different producer, like, did you have any kind of idea of what you thought the music to that melody would be, and was it completely different? And like, how does that feel? I guess handing it over, not knowing what's going to come back.
I had a good idea in this scenario. I had a good idea of what was going to happen. It was blatantly obvious what he was going to do. I wanted to sing on some strings, you know, and that's what he did. So it was, you know, it was pretty obvious what was going to happen. It was really, really lush. But obviously, sometimes if you demo, you can demo over chopped up tracks. You know, you can demo over beats. You can, you know, I play the keyboard, for example. So if we go into, you know, if we're talking about, you know, songwriting tips in this section, a lot of my songwriting, my early songwriting happened with my band Carver Carver. It was like a 4-piece band originally, and we expanded that to incorporate horn sections later and stuff like that. And we'd always have to start a track somehow. And some of the tracks I'd start, definitely in later years, with my keyboard, a Juno 106, which is really fat keyboard. And a couple of the tunes that ended up in US film and TV were ones that started off with this big fat squelchy riff. And then we'd put the beats around that, and then the guitarist would, you know, do his thing, and, you know, and I'd sing over the top of it, you know, just bit by bit, you know. So there's definitely many, many different ways you can write a song.
Yeah. And you say you've done quite a lot of this collaborating, and especially across different genres and things like that. How do you find how do you find that in general? And is there like, I guess there are various ways of doing it, but do you get a lot of, with like a vocal that's a bit like this, or lyrics that are a bit like this? And
what do you mean, like request?
Do you get like a brief with things, or like, is it much more like an open, just play around with some ideas type thing?
It's hard, isn't it? I mean, I've worked with lots of different people. One interesting one was, have you heard of Gary Lucas, the guitarist? Like, yeah, Captain Beefheart's guitarist, and
yes.
He actually did Chris Cornell's guitars on his album, debut album. Wow. And I'm in a bit of a, you know, project in Prague with him, kinda. It's been going on for donkey's years, and he laid the guitar down in Prague. I hadn't met him. I then got to Prague, and I put down this weird vocal that, you know, it's a million miles away from commercial drum and bass. You know, this is quite scary music in places, to be totally honest. It probably belongs more in a horror soundtrack, you know. And so I did my thing, and thankfully they liked it, you know. And I met him years later in America, and we had a laugh, going, "Oh yeah, you nailed that one." I was going, "Phew." Because lyrics, you know, I mean, I think the owner of the studio had given me the general plan to incorporate Prague ghost stories, so at least I knew that it had to be a bit spooky.
And was that a guitar track you were working to there?
Yeah. Gary put the guitars down, and he's got a very unique style. I mean, he co-wrote a lot of the Jeff Buckley stuff.
Oh, nice.
Really amazing guitarist, you know, and so, you know, I mean, he has a style when he's playing that kind of thing, and he was using a lot of kind of trippy effects as well, because we were going to do this thing about Prague ghost stories, and some of it was just horrific. You know, I kind of bottled some of the lyrics, to be brutally honest, because I just couldn't imagine singing something that brutal.
Yeah.
Of the music. But this, the one track in question, I think it was The Procuress of Karmelitska Street. You know, it was just totally messed up.
That's a good title.
Oh God, yeah, I kind of reined it in a bit. And, but I had free reign as well, you know. I had to kind of, do this kind of narrative thing. Somebody gets killed in the middle of the track or whatever. Oh yeah, it's a bit messy, but yeah, he was happy.
Yeah. Is that project available anywhere? Can we listen to that?
Yeah, I think Gary re-released it, and it also came out on the Ghosts of Prague, which is this band in the Czech Republic that exists, and whenever we can get it together. We did some gigs a few years ago, but obviously, I mean, he lives in America. A lot of the musicians come from the Czech avant-garde jazz thrash scene, and so they're in Czech. I'm in the UK. The link was my band, Carver Carver. We used to gig a lot in the Czech Republic, and that's how I got to know some of these cats.
Nice. I'll have to hear some of that.
Yeah, I'll send it. It's some of it's horrible, actually. I'm kind of like, whoa. Please don't play that to many people. No, I'm proud of it. It is cool.
It's
very different.
Yeah, it's great that you've been able to do that, to do so many different things. It must be such an interesting way of doing it, and fun thing to just work with so many different people. And
well, I mean, that Kino thing is all about love, and it's very uplifting, isn't it? And the antithesis of that is probably this Ghost of Prague and horror story.
One end to the other.
Yeah.
And how do you
keep it real and interesting?
Yeah. How do you find is there any kind of major differences that you find working solo on? I mean, working collaboratively from a distance, I guess, or working collaboratively, like say when you work with Carver Carver, and I guess you do that stuff together a lot of the time of building the songs, but this time it's a lot more working remotely. How do you?
Well, Carver Carver, I mean, the band kind of evolved over a number of years. We had a good innings, we gigged in China, the States, and
we gigged together one time in Huddersfield with Carver Carver
with the blues band.
No, Carver Carver, years ago. First time I met you, I think it was Welcome Fest is what it was, on that rugby pitch.
Oh, of course, yeah. No, I saw you in my friend's garden before that. The original Welcome Fest.
Oh, that was the year before, wasn't it? Yeah.
The Amitu's album, Garden, and
yeah,
I remember having a chat. That was a wicked day, and then that evolved into the one on the rugby pitch.
Yeah,
I forgot about that gig. Yeah, Carver played that, by that point it was kind of a new bunch of lads that just to keep the dream alive, kind of thing. I kept the band going, we had a good innings. We did most of Europe, did Glastonbury a lot of times, and a lot of festivals like Beijing MIDI Festival. That was amazing. Lots of big gigs in Hungary. Did some in Germany, France, all over really. But it's all DIY. And towards the end, I did manage to get it signed to a label in the 90s called Delirium Records, who were, I guess, most famous for Porcupine Tree, who were very proggy. I don't know if you've come across them. They're a bit more like Pink Floyd. They became massive in the States, huge audiences. And Carver Carver were kind of tacked to that scene, really. But by the third album, it was clear that we didn't really belong to that proggy world. We were more, how did the NME put it? We were a bit King Crimson, but if George Clinton had joined them. So it was a bit Parliament Funkadelic meets, King Crimson. And then by the third album, we were really into samplers and we were really into electronic music. So that then, helped evolve the band. And it was at that moment that I started kind of getting my keyboard out and kind of getting all these mad squelchy riffs. And some of those tracks, I think in particular, Bank Job, Sick Fuck, sorry about that swear word, and Terrorists, they all started with like keyboard riffs, and they ended up in shows like Boys and Girls Guide to Getting Down, which was a really good independent film in America. But possibly the best sync that we managed to get was one that Jason started as a track. Jason was a bass player and he was really clued up with Cubase and stuff like that. It was a track called Tick. And that ended up in John from Cincinnati, which was an HBO production.
Nice.
And it only lasted one series because of the writer's strike. And there were 24 tracks in that series. and it was all absolutely huge acts like Muse and TV on the Radio and Bob Dylan and Elvis Costello, and David Byrne, and then there was this kind of band no one had heard of whatsoever. like people going, "Who are these knobheads?" kind of thing. And like we managed to see a bit of a spike in the sales for the single, and that was on my label, Chocolate Fireguard. But that track, Tick, was more. Jason kind of got most of that together in advance of me putting a vocal over the top of it. So it's a bit like, the dance collaborations later on, whereas a lot of the other Carver stuff was kind of, I'd start a riff and then we'd build a track like that. And then I'd have to lever the vocal over the top of that. It was rare in Carver that we started vocal down. I wish we had, actually, because I think that's probably how you're meant to write songs, isn't it? Maybe.
Well, whatever gets the job done.
Maybe not. Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, I like to work in different ways. I've managed to do. I've committed jazz fraud over the years. I had a period where I went out with Matt Bourne, who's an amazing pianist, and a number of other jazz cats, and we used to laugh. I was like, "My God, I'm really committing jazz fraud here." We realised that.
Jazz fraud.
Going all abstract over the top of it. We got away with it. Which is not surprising because people like Matt Board and Dave Kane and Keith Jafrate, they were really, really good jazz musicians. But I still think I was taking the piss, with my shooby-doo.
Just throwing a bit of scat every now and then.
Yeah, but that was totally improvised, So that's another way of composition, isn't it? Just doing it there and then.
That's an interesting one too, yeah. Great stuff. Cool, so let's move into section 2 now. Now, we had a few tips in there, but this is where you have, I guess, have a particular songwriting tip for us. So have you got a particular one in mind for us, Pat, that you've not already told us about?
I think we've probably covered a lot of that in the last section, but I would say you've got to be aware of your environment if you're collaborating, which I think is something I can bring to this. I'm more of a collaborator than a singer-songwriter, aren't I? So it's probably a good idea to ask what lyrics they don't like. I mean, that can open a can of worms. One guy once came back to me and went, "Well, as long as you don't sing about necrophilia." And I was going, "Well, frankly, I wasn't thinking about singing about that, but anyway."
Then you're like, narrowed it down.
Well, who am I working with if that's the first thing that comes out of their mind? You know what I mean? But, it's a safe bet to ask, what don't you like? And also, are there any artists that you really like? Because you could be giving them something which is just totally not suitable. Particularly if you're singing in different genres,
And I guess when you
Ghosts of Prague stuff on drum and bass, there's absolutely no way they would probably. Well, I've yet to hear a drum and bass artist fuse that kind of jazz horror soundtrack vocal over an uplifting drum and bass track. As I'm saying that is actually starting to appeal to me because I think it'd be quite funny to see a load of kids raving and not realising what the vocals were about, but. I can't imagine it's going to happen anytime soon.
Could be a gap in the market.
Yeah.
When you talk about what lyrics people don't like, does that come in terms of like themes or like particular words, or is it like subjects and themes? Or
I'm not very good at girl meets boy, boy meets girl. Those kind of I'm heartbroken. But at the same time, I do like heartbreak in lyrics. So it's a way of. How do you kind of put that into a track and not freak out your collaborator? You might decide it's too soppy, or you might decide you're a complete psychopath. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you don't know them, it's really hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas if you're in a band and you tour like we do with Carvers, you go all over the place, then you probably know too much about your bandmates. So
yeah, testify to that.
that can go into the pot, can't it?
It must be an interesting way of doing it that way, and not. Do you ever do you still get that? Do you still get nervousness when you're sending stuff back to people? How do you feel about that kind of stuff?
Expectations in dance music that can be tricky. At the end of the day, especially if you're trying to earn a living out of it, you've kind of got to put your foot down sometimes and talk about the business side as well, which kind of kills the party, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it shouldn't do, should it? Because you know, at the end of the day, if you're providing a vocal for a track, and that's going to help it achieve some kind of status, probably a status that you're unaware of as well, because you might not be part of that scene. But you do need to cover your interests as well. So once you get over that, you know, you can maybe experiment with the vibe and hopefully not freak them out too much.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question? Sorry,
I think so. Yeah. I'm kind of thinking of, in terms of when I'm working by myself on something, then there's always that, I still get it now, like a little bit of nerves when I'm sharing it with someone. And I guess one of the differences there is, like, when you're working with different people all the time, that little bit of nerves comes again. Whereas, like, if I'm doing it with the band, like people I know very well, then, like, obviously it's not a big deal to share something with them that you've created because you know them that well. But when you're sharing it with new people that you don't know how they're going to react, you still get a little bit of like, is this any good, or is this
more so my own stuff. I mean, I'm sat on an album full of electronica that I wrote in Ableton. I'm really proud of in some ways, but I've still not finished it. I mean, you've probably seen those memes going around with like skeletons in front of it. It's a case of that, I'm afraid, you know. And
yeah.
I'm not that great on the technical side. I can do it, you know. So I don't really know what I'm doing when it comes to hi-hats and kicks and stuff like that. So that's really nerve-wracking if I send something like that out, which is totally me, you know. And in a sense, you're looking for people to share the kind of the worry, aren't you, when you collaborate?
Yeah.
You know, if there's a few of you, it doesn't feel like it's a total failure, does it? When it just goes tits up or whatever, unless it turns into a bun fight. It's your fault. I told you that lyric were bad. But yeah, I get nervous, you know, I do, and but sometimes it's good to leap into the absurd. And you know, I've done some gigs where I've looked back and gone, Pat, how the hell did you do that? You know, you've just got up and pretty much freestyled in front of a big audience. You don't do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You do that. And if I'm going to be honest about it, I would have been terrified. That I'd have gone, bollocks to it, I'm just going to do it. And if I fall splat on the rocks, then so be it, you know.
Yeah, and there's that magic at gigs in certain crowds can just bring, you can't even, like, you're in some kind of trance state, and a lot of the time with gigs, I find that I come off sometimes like, what the hell happened there? How did that happen? How did I end up doing that thing?
You
it's just something about that energy.
Have done that? I did it as a drummer once. I fell off a drum riser in the middle of a track. I'm not really a good drummer, but like I just fell off, and the band stopped and just all, you know, turned around and looked at an empty stage. The drummer was there. That was a bit interesting. And also, like, obviously in the 90s, I think it's fair to say that Carver were a bit party orientated, let's say. And yeah, I was in some interesting states on stage, and I wondered how the hell I got through a gig. And I'm pretty sure it was the same for the other band members. You know, I think we lost band members in the middle of sets and stuff like that. You know, where's the bass gone, or what happened to the guitarist, or whatever. But yeah, it can be really nerve-wracking, can't it? And also when I mean, I've run a label as well. I used to run Chocolate Fireguard a few years ago. I put a few releases out there. It was all started on a kind of a business scheme, an business scheme. I think I was on the dole, you know, kind of trying to pull myself out of that. And my mad plan was to release music, which of course sounds really daft as I say it now. And you know, that was quite nerve-wracking. You know, the idea that you were offering these compilations or, you know, single artist products out there, and sometimes people could be quite mean, you know, with what they say, but often they don't know why they're saying it. I mean, I've had a track that I took into a record shop for some direct sales once, and they said it was rubbish. You know, it's polite, actually. They really did pan it about how crap it was. And then 2 years later, the same track was signed to a label, and it was listed in the same shop, and they were going on about how amazing it was. So go figure.
Yeah.
It can be nerve-wracking, can't it?
Yeah. And that's I mean, that's a good point to remember in terms of like people's subjective responses to things. Not be, you know, like, because one person said it's rubbish doesn't mean it is. And there's, you know, there's so many stories like that, isn't there, where great artists who at the start people didn't take the music at all. And a lot of times it's that same thing, you know, like you said there, like when you went in, did it, and then they would dismiss it. But then when it was signed to a label and coming in, a lot of time that's the thing, if it's kind of like endorsed by a bigger thing, then people are like, oh yeah, it was great. Whereas they didn't like it when it was independent.
Yeah, is it rubbish? I mean, also, I mean, I got into this mindset. I kind of drifted into music development at one point. I got incredibly frustrated by the lack of music support in the area. It seemed really weird that, you know, there were these big organisations here, but nobody was like plugging into what was known as the British Music Partnership. And as a volunteer, I was saying earlier before this, wasn't I, that I kind of plugged into that, and I started repping bands that I had no kind of interest in it. I was doing it just to promote the region and, you know, get it, you know, where it should be at events like Meedem and South by Southwest. And in that environment, you're not allowed to say that a particular style of music is crap. You can't. You shouldn't anyway, because at the end of the day, why dismiss a musical genre when you don't know anything about it? I mean, for years I was kind of explaining drum and bass to my old rock friends, and they were going, "Oh, it all sounds the same." And I was going, "Yeah, but I guess if you took a drum and bass kid into a thrash metal club, they'd probably say that as well. They'd probably go, all those thrash metal tracks sound exactly the same." You know, so it's weird, isn't it? It's kind of like,
it's not good and bad. It's just what people like, what you like, what you don't like. It's so
you can't really do that. So I mean, I found myself working with all kinds of genres that I didn't actually know anything about, to be honest. Like indie bands. It was more about getting bands that were ready to the market, you know, to South by Southwest or whatever, and helping them out in that way. It didn't come down to whether I liked it or not. It came down to whether they were ready and whether they had their ducks in a row and whether there were labels involved and, you know, how we could help those labels and stuff like that. So it was a different mindset. So generally speaking, I don't like this kind of dismissal culture within the music industry. I kind of think it's brain dead and unnecessary. It's good to see good in all music, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, whether it's going to be commercially viable or not is another question.
It's a different question, isn't it? Yeah. If you enjoy it or someone else is going to get some enjoyment out of it, then
case in point, I've sessioned, and I'm proud to say that I've sessioned for a guy called Mr. Methane, who actually pitches his farts for a living. He was managed by Jethro Tull's drummer, Barrymore Barlow, who had an affinity with wind instruments. You know where I'm going with this. And Mr. Methane, who ended up having quite a good career on shows like Eurotrash, he needed backing bands and stuff like that. And I did backing vocals for him. I was quite proud of those, actually. I laid them all up really nicely, and then he farted all over them. I played a bit of trumpet, and I even played drums, presumably because Barry didn't want to play drums on. Well, I can't blame him, really. He'd been playing stadiums with Jethro Tull. So I played some crap reggae beats, you know, as well as I could do. And,
wow. Yeah, well, that's it.
So, you know, I wouldn't say that was rubbish. It was funny.
It's different, yeah.
Check him out, Mr. Methane.
Yeah, I'll look him up. Is he still going, do you know?
He can actually pitch his farts. He really can.
That's
it's
amazing.
not a pitch. He really can be musical with his art.
I'll have to hear that to believe it. That's.
I'm not sure what you'd do about songwriting points on any of that.
Yeah, maybe that'd be an interesting guest if I got him on here.
Yeah, get the lawyers in.
Wow. Brilliant. Cool. Yeah, let's move on. That's on the topic of Mr. Methane. Let's move on to the next subject. This is section 3 of the podcast, where I ask my guests to share with us a song that's meaningful to them in some way related to bereavement. And I know you've not chosen Mr. Methane song for this one.
No. I could have done, actually, but it could have been the death of me as a musician, presumably. Yeah.
But what I do for this part is I'll put the link in the description. So if you're not familiar with the song, you want to go listen to it, you can do. And we'll have a chat about it. So what song did you choose for this part?
Well, I mean, I struggled with this because I don't know many tracks about bereavement. Well, not overtly, but it's a track that I've always loved ever since I was a young rocker. And I've chosen Still in Love with You by Thin Lizzy, like the live and dangerous version, you know, the live one with Scott Gorham on guitar and Brian Robertson on guitar. And, you know, and the amazing vocalist that is Phil Lynott. I absolutely love this version.
So yeah, why did you choose that one for us? It's a great track.
Right. Over time, it became associated with my mother's passing. You know, she'd been suffering from cancer for many, many, many years. This is in the 90s. And which was really hard for me because I was in Yorkshire and she was living in London. And I guess I'm thankful that I was there when she did pass away. Very tricky time, a very strange feeling, to be honest. As she passed away, my hearing went with her. I don't know if you've covered this kind of thing on your podcast, and I know this because her beloved Siamese cat became increasingly reverbed and sounded more and more distant, and I had to snap myself out of it, really. But anyway, getting back to the track, you know, I would never be able to write a song about bereavement, specifically about my mother. I think it would be a bit too upsetting, really. But I was over in Prague doing a blues album, and this would have been in the mid-90s. You know, I bumped into some great players, and they had this idea that I could do some blues. And of course, I really liked the blues, but I'd not really done much. I'm a big fan of Jimi Hendrix and stuff like that. And I recorded this blues album in a fantastic studio run by a friend of mine called Richard Mader, Faust Studios in Prague. And towards the end of the session, I thought, you know what, I'll try Still in Love with You. I just felt I needed to do it. It was very spontaneous, and it got together with the keyboard player. And as I sung it, I realized that I was still grieving for my mother. I was messed up by the fact that I'd split from my girlfriend. And I was thinking of Phil Lynott's mother, Philomena, as well. And it really did get to me. And but I delivered quite a decent version of Still in Love with You. It came out on an album. And then moving forward from that, I ended up incorporating it into a kind of a more of an uplifting dance track, which became quite a big deal in house circles in New York. It was signed to Subliminal Records, who were really big at that time. So it kind of went off in another direction, you know. But, you know, the song, even more so now that I recorded it, you know, after my mum had passed, it just I just associate it with bereavement. It's a very sad song. It really gets to me, and I think the emotion that is put into it by the guitarists and Phil Lynott, particularly on that live version, is just amazing.
Yeah.
You know,
was it a song your mum was fond of particularly, or was it unconnected to your mum in that sense, but just that it kind of released that thing in you?
It just released it in me. I kind of connected with Thin Lizzy as a kind of an 18-year-old boy, I reckon. It was kind of like rock and roll, you know. I loved all the kind of the up-tempo ones, Bad Reputation and all that. But that were the cheesy tearjerker track, wasn't it? I think, which I really liked. And I think it was me kind of realizing that I was really struggling with the whole bereavement thing, and it came out as I was singing that. But you know, I hadn't totally got to terms with it. For 2 years previously, I'd just been filling up my time doing stuff for other bands and doing projects, anything but face up to the fact that I was messed up over my mum's passing. And it was by performing that track, I think I realised, you know, there's just something, there's loads in that tune. I know it's dedicated to his mother as well, you know, and I think that's what triggered me, really. There's a lot of pain in that track, the way that Thin Lizzy perform it.
Yeah, it's amazing how that can happen sometimes in a certain song, just brings
God.
it out of you. I was interested in what you saying there.
You lose your parents, you're still in love with them, aren't you? You know, there's loads of regrets, you know, it's heavy. It's really heavy, and I think Phil Lynott really got it right there. Even though I must say his mother was still alive when he wrote it, you know, but increasingly you kind of sense that it is about his relationship with his mother as well. I don't know why that is, but I think he might have even dedicated it a few times live in various. I was obsessed with that track for a bit, as you are when you're a boy, aren't you? You just kind of go and get all the different versions.
Yeah, it's a great track.
How they're stood on stage, all that kind of stuff,
I was interested in saying about losing your hearing when your mum passed. How long did that last for?
I don't know. It was very emotional.
Yeah.
Afternoon, but yeah, it was crazy. It was like the cat was meowing and it was getting more and more distant, and it was like somebody was putting a huge reverb on it, and it was getting I really had to pull myself out of it. It was like I was traveling, must have been for a few minutes.
Well, must have been scary.
Yeah, it is and it's not. It is what it is, I think. But I think I kind of channeled that into "Still in Love with You," my version of it, anyway. I didn't realise until I started trying to sing it.
Is that version available anywhere?
Yeah. There are a few versions out there. There's one on a blues album, Pat Fulgoni live in Prague, but I think that ended up with some cello on it and keyboards and vocal and a big guitar solo on it. It was that kind of album. And when we did a version under the name, don't laugh, I put it out as Jesus Haystacks on a white label.
Nice.
Are you aware of Giant Haystacks from the 70s, the wrestler? All right, you're younger.
I know the name. Yeah.
So I had this kind of pseudonym called Jesus Haystacks, which ended up being shortened to J Haystacks, because I always think humour belongs in music, but sometimes people are a bit more serious, aren't they? But this was a very serious house label, and it came out in 2 parts with tons of different remixes, and it was a big deal, I think. Even though, yet again, it's another scene I'm not particularly a part of, but I've dipped in as a singer. I understand that Gatecrasher had it in their top 10 of the year. I know that DJs like Roger Sanchez were like on the radio going about how it's the biggest track he's heard and how it's welling him up and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it did really well, and that's on Subliminal Records, but it's under the pseudonym J Haystacks. They denied my Jesus. In fact, when DJ Magazine rang up to find out about it, I didn't know what to say. I told them that Jesus was from Brazil, and they went away thinking Jesus Haystacks was Brazilian.
Nice.
Strange story. But it's a lot more uplifting. You know what I mean? It's we put an uplifting vibe to it. Nice. I've yet to do. I mean, I've played with your band with my blues band, haven't I? I've got this new band called the Pat Fulgoni Blues Experience, which has been Corona Bluesed as I've been trying to get it together. And I've yet to play Still in Love with You in that band, but I've got some dates in the Czech Republic in November at a blues festival. Touchwood will be allowed to do that with the whole Corona thing.
Yeah,
I kind of suspect that it's more a case of whether they'll let us in, rather than the other way around. I might try and get it together for that, because we do have a bit of Thin Lizzy in the Pat Fulgoni Blues Experience. Nice. We do a slow version of Don't Believe a Word, and it's got a bit of that vibe to it.
It's a great track too.
Yeah, what about big up Thin Lizzy?
Yeah, amazing. Well, I'll tag your page and stuff in here, and so you've got your own website, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I'm more on social media. I've got like a Facebook, Pat Fulgoni Official, an Instagram with my name on it. I suppose you need to spell it properly to find it, so it's Fulgoni. I've answered to a lot worse. And I've got a YouTube channel as well that you can find a lot of the drum and bass stuff and a lot of my live blues stuff on youtube.com/Pat Fulgoni.
Cool. So yeah, people can check out your stuff and look at some of them songs we talked about throughout the podcast.
Oh, wicked.
Yeah, thanks a lot for joining me, Pat. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. I hope that was coherent.
Yeah, no, that's been great. Yeah, lots of good stuff.
We had a few problems with the DIY next door. Now, poor start as well. I couldn't seem to make much sense. You almost invented a new pseudonym for me as well.
Yeah. But yeah, all good, man. All good. So yeah, I appreciate your time. And
Big up the band as well. You know, Blind Jones Experience. I love it. As I said,
thanks,
we
man.
played together at the Marsh Blues Festival.
Yeah, hopefully we're back
Cracking
gigging again
project
soon.
that is. Yeah, no, I hope they get that back on after all this Corona nonsense.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed, right. And thanks for tuning in, everyone. I'll be back with another episode soon.